Hello and welcome. In today's exciting episode, I make this red Christmas dress and it's using Butterick 6677 and yeah, it has pockets. It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket. So here's the pattern I'll be working on this episode. It's Butterick B6677. And this is just the website Something Delightful where you buy the patterns from. And it's the blue one that I like. That's what attracted me to the pattern. Although when I got sent the pattern, that dress wasn't on the picture. So I forgot why I got the pattern. Anyway, so these are the fabric needs for America in inches and yards and then the rest of the world in metric. You can screenshot or I'll put a link below to the website. And they have sales every other month. So yeah. So there's a couple of different parts to this. It's pretty basic, but there's a bodice and a skirt and pockets, and I've put sleeves on this, and there's also a sash. So yeah, I sort of was a bit all over the place with this, but then so it's a bit chaotic, but I think I've put the footage in a reasonable order. So first I did the bodice. So you have to join the front and the two backs together. There's no darts or anything. You just have to sew them at the the shoulders and at the side. And yeah, I because I only used 2 yards of fabric, I actually cut the sash in 3 parts rather than 2, so I had to machine sew them into, piece them together. So, but we'll focus on the bodice for the moment. So I machine sewed the sides and the top, and then I pinned back the seam allowance and I hand stitched that down and hand finished that. So once that was done, the next step is you have to stay stitch around the neckline just so it doesn't pull out of shape when you are attaching the bias tape. And I actually made my own bias tape because I've never used bias binding before, and I thought, what the hell? But it's weird. It is so weird. I usually fully line things, so this was foreign to me. But I think it worked out fine. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, so I just pinned it on and then did the usual seam allowance, and I machine sewed around it. And then I cut down half the seam allowance, cut it down to half, and then I pinned it, the bias behind. And I understitched and with the machine, and then I pinned it. And then you're supposed to top stitch around the top, but I think top stitching looks ugly. Just my personal preference. I know on other people, on the fabrics they use, can look really gorgeous, but I don't like it. And so I just hand stitched this. So I did 1 row around the top and then another one at the bottom so that the bottom of the bias binding wouldn't flip out or anything like that. So yep, here it is finished. So the only thing left to do on the bodice is the loop and the button at the top, but I have to do a whole lot of other things first. So yeah, and I haven't ironed it, so that's why it's a bit crinkly. But apart from that, it's looking good, which is a relief because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing with the bias binding. But it's okay. And then the next step is they want you to do the same thing with the sleeves because it's the pattern is for a sleeveless dress, but I want to put sleeves on this. So I've borrowed the design from the 1939 cute dress, but I've added a bit. So you have to put big box pleats in at the bottom of the sleeve and the top. So I just pinned them in, and then I put the sleeve facing on, and I just checked that was okay. And then this is one I've already done, so I'm doing the second one. So I machine sewed the cuff, the facing, it's like an inside cuff on, and then I just checked because the box pleat is pretty complicated. Not sure where I'm showing you that. Yeah, so I machine sewed it on, and then I just turn it over and check that the box pleat is fine because it's pretty easy to mess that up. So that's fine. So then I sewed down the top of the facing so that there's no raw edge on the inside. And then you have to stitch in the ditch or understitch so that the facing stays on the inside and doesn't sort of slip out of the bottom of the cuff or anything. And then and then I just checked that that was fine. And then the next thing to do is I had to make the sleeve a whole sleeve. So I pinned the two hems of that together, two sides of the sleeve together, and yeah, just sort of moved the facing out of the way so there was a clean line to sew. Then machine sewed that, and then I pinned back the seam allowance and hand stitched that down. There's a lot of hand stitching in this, but I mean, you can do whatever, but yeah, I just prefer the feel and the look of hand finished garments. So the sleeves were done. Now it was time to attach them onto the bodice. So I pinned them in. First, the way I set a sleeve is I pinch the two tops together and then I turn it inside out, and then I pin the tops together and then the bottoms together, then the bottom half, and then I fill in the top half. Then I machine sewed it once really carefully. Then I turned it out and just checked that there were no puckers or wrong pleats, and that was fine. So then I reinforced it by machine sewing it again. And then you just finish them how you normally finish sleeves. And then the next thing is a ruffle, but I didn't have a ruffle. I don't want a ruffle on mine. So the next thing after that is to sew the back, two back pieces together, and you have to stop at a certain point where the green pin is, and the rest is just left open so you can fit your head through when you put it on, and there's just a bead button at the top. So I machine sewed them together, reinforced it at the top, and then I pinned the seam allowance, the remaining seam allowance, and just stitch that down. So now the whole of the bodice is done. I just have to do that one button. But yeah, I'm quite happy with the way it looks. So I put it on the mannequin, and the pattern on the back is slightly mismatched, but it's not too bad. I'm happy with it because I was only using 2 yards of fabric. I was very limited in what I could do. So on the front here, I really so I was able to center the hearts. And yeah, I kind of, as I was cutting it, I totally ignored the circles. And yeah, I'm kind of relieved that the placement isn't too bad for them. But yeah, the hearts are absolutely beautiful, and that's the bit I was completely focused on. So yeah, love it. Again, it's a little wrinkly because I haven't pressed it yet. But yeah, because I don't have an ironing board, so every time I want to press something, I have to clear off my workbench, lay down a few layers of fabric, and then press it. So yeah, I'm a little bit lazy that way. But here it is with the sash. Oh, I should probably show you how I made the sash. Oh, there's a bit of footage missing. Anyway, I'll show you how I made them. So first, you're supposed to cut it in 2 parts and then sew the 2 parts together to make the one long bit. But yeah, I only had room on my leftover bits of fabric for 3 smaller bits. So I sewed them all together and then stitched down the seam so that they would sit right. And then I turned it in half and pinned it and sewed along that and sewed along both ends. Then I cut the corners at both ends because they're sort of a bias cut. And then I turned it through, or you're supposed to leave a gap in the middle and you turn it through, and then you're supposed to machine top stitch everything. But yeah, all these pins are just, how the edge is stubborn and it won't stay through. So yeah, this is the pin marks the bit that wasn't machine sewn. So now I just top stitch round it by hand. And yeah, I actually did this way earlier in the process, and I just was wearing it as a hair scarf the whole time. So that's why I ended up putting it on the mannequin after I'd finished the bodice, and I think it looks adorable. So if I had enough fabric, I would definitely make a head scarf as well as a sash, but I don't. Anyway, so now it's time for the pockets, which are once they're done, they make up part of the front of the skirt. So the front of the skirt has sort of pocket holes in it. And then so you put the inside of the pocket, right side facing right side, and then you stitch that, and then you turn it over and you understitch it so that it sits the right way. And then you're supposed to top stitch that, but again with the sewing machine, but again I just top stitched it with did it by hand because I like the look better. And then you've got this other pocket piece, actually the top corner of the front of the skirt. So yeah, you stitch them together, the pocket and the corner of the top together, and they form the pockets on the inside. It's hard to explain, but rather easy to do. So once you've stitched them, you reinforce it, and then now you just reinforce so that along the side and along the top, and it all looks like one front piece. And then you pin the front and the back together, sew them with the sewing machine, then hem them, pin back, and well, I hand stitch the hems, the seam allowance. And now it is time to pin the bodice to the skirt. So you just have notches that you have to match up, and you go all the way around carefully and match them up. And then once that's done, you machine sew them together. And yeah, then you just check. Now, basically the last thing you do before you do the hem is that and sew the button on the back, is that you sew this elastic around the waist of your dress. But you're supposed to do it by buying really thin elastic, and just once you've done stitched your skirt and your bodice together, then you do another one at the edge of the seam allowance. You stitch around it again there, and then you thread the elastic through. But I bought the slightly thicker elastic. I mean, I could have made the waist seam like a bigger seam allowance, but it's already a little bit too short for me, for my liking. It's sort of just below the knees, whereas I would want it just maybe a few inches longer, or 10 centimeters in metric. But yeah, so I didn't want to do that. So I just measured out and marked 16 points around it, and then sewed them, went back and forth on the sewing machine up and down so that it doesn't wreck the stretchiness of the elastic. Upon reflection, I really should have tried it on before I did this, because I think this is the finished dress. I think it would be fine, absolutely fine with no elastic. It is a thicker weight cotton, so yeah, there is a little bulk to it. But if you're using most people just sew with rayon. Well, you know, the other sewing YouTube channels seem to just use mostly rayon or, you know, cotton voile, really thin fabrics. And that would be absolutely fine. I don't think you'd need the elastic at all. So yeah, obviously I made the shorter one, the yellow picture, and there's no big ruffle around the bottom. It takes another yard of fabric if you want to do the larger one. And this is what it looks like without the sash on. Definitely going to wear it with the sash around the waist pretty much all the time. So maybe, you know, when I'm at home or something. But yeah, I think next time I do this, I'm definitely going to do this pattern again, because it took like a Sunday afternoon, and that was including all the hand sewing and night. But I stopped to like have meals, and it wasn't working very fast. And yeah, I was really limited in the placement, but I was glad I got a few of the love hearts on the sash. I think that's really cute. And this is literally all the bits that I have left. So yeah, I think if I used a smaller sleeve pattern and didn't have any sleeve facing, just sort of turned up the bottom of the hem of the cuff twice and just hand stitch it down, then I would have enough to do a couple of other things, like make the skirt slightly longer, and and use bias binding from the actual fabric. Now I was going to use this Christmas fabric. I bought it because of the moose originally, but it's also got owls and foxes in it, and they are adorable. So I bought 3 yards of this fabric, and I was going to do the longer dress from the Butterick 6677 pattern. But I don't think I will. I think I'm going to do the bamboo dress because that also takes about 3 yards. And yeah, I just think I'd like the moose dress, the Christmas moose dress in the bamboo style better than this other one. Just, I don't know, there's more swishiness in the bamboo dress. I do like the longer blue dress in Butterick 6677, so I do think I'll make that eventually. First, I think I'll make the skirt of the dress, just the skirt with the elastic waistband and a sash. I think you could get all of that out of 2 yards, and these are 2-yard cuts. The banana print, the blue and the rainbow raindrops, all of those, I think I'll make skirts out of them. And then this one here is a rayon, so I think I'll make that into another dress like the Christmas red one that I just made with slightly smaller sleeves. And in that sort of muted green, I think it's going to look very 1930s, 1940s, sort of Depression era, you know, World War II-ish. So, yeah, I really like the way it turned out. But, yeah, I think I will make a bamboo print. I just call that the bamboo dress because I really like the version I made with the bamboo print. Yeah, so I do think, yeah, I've got some other fabrics, and I think these would look good as dresses. So I might make these dresses, or maybe the skirt. I don't know, they're 2-yard cuts, so I'll do something with them, either a dress or a skirt. And I've got loads of this fabric because they were selling, it was on clearance, so I bought like a bolt of it. So I might sort of go all Family Von Trapp with that and make a... So I'll make a short dress with shorter sleeves, a long dress with big puffy sleeves, sort of gunny sacks-ish, and then I'll make a plain blouse out of the bodice with, again, just shortish sleeves, and also a long skirt with a sash and an elastic waist. And yeah, I might do that because that'd be fun. I just love the idea of having 7 days worth of outfits in that. Anyway, this is my red dress that I made and I'm very happy with it. And I love that scarlet flower on it, the faux flower. And oh yeah, the moose fabric. Once I've made my bamboo dress out of the Christmas moose fabric, if there's any left, I'm going to make a contrasting sash for my red dress. I think that would be really cool. Oh, and by the way, it has pockets. It has pockets. So yeah, I put tinsel in, just so you know. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed me making my first Christmas dress. And yeah, it's pretty easy, especially if you don't do any hand sewing, then I think it would be really quick to make. And yeah, I'm definitely going to try this one again.